So this is the point where I normally get people asking questions about, well, where do I store coffee? And we get usual sort of things of people saying, oh, well, I put it in a Tupperware box on the side. I take it out of the bag, put it in a Tupperware box, or I roll the bag down and I put it in the fridge, or I put it in the freezer, or something like that. We'll have all combinations of those, and really to work out what's going to be best, we need to go through those 5 things and find out which one, if any, are in abundance in that storage method. Because if we're exposing it to more of those 5 things, we're going to have more aging, and coffee's not going to taste as nice. So when you think about where we store it, does it have excess light? Does it have excess heat? Does it have excess moisture? Does it have excess air? Does it have excess strong odors? So we want to make sure we kind of eliminate those. So when we were looking at that little matrix, we had different states. So we had packaging of completely open, and then we had the one-way valved bag, the metal-lined bag. So the metal-lined bag is pretty good. It stops light, doesn't really stop heat, stops air, stops moisture, stops strong odors. So 4 of those 5 things are being really well looked after with that metal-lined one-way valve. Incidentally, the one-way valve on there is not for you to get a sneak peek of what the coffee is going to taste like. It's to allow carbon dioxide to be released. So if we didn't have some way of releasing that, the bag would explode, which happens every time we get a kind of faulty valve. And then obviously when we've got the totally exposed stuff, that's exposed to everything. Okay, and then we have 2 different states. So beans, obviously, we just did the thing on grinding, and we talked about surface area. Obviously, if we grind our coffee, we're exposing much more surface area to anything that wants to take stuff out of it. We're deliberately doing that so we can extract things really quickly. If we're doing it prematurely, we're going to massively increase the amount of exposure that we have to those 5 things. Okay, so best thing to do is grind it just before you brew. Keep it as bean if you can. If you can't, then you'll just have to muddle on as best you can. Okay, so how long are we talking about? So for our open ground coffee, we start to see changes happen after kind of 2 minutes. Your carbon dioxide starts to dissipate really quickly, because obviously you've just broken down the cell structure of the bean. Carbon dioxide's it's just like letting the air out of a balloon. So the first 2 minutes you lose quite a bit, and then after up to sort of 20 minutes you've lost pretty much everything that's in there. When you expose that ground coffee to air as well, the oxidation happens at an incredible rate. So it's happening at the same sort of time that your apple is going brown. So 20 minutes, half an hour, it starts to go brown, and then 2 hours you're cutting chunks off it, and that's really the same with coffee. So once it's ground, kind of 2 hours, it's almost completely stale. Now, if you've never ever tasted fresh coffee, won't really matter. That's okay. And if you're enjoying it, that's okay. That's fine. But you're going to get much better results if you grind a lot closer to when you're brewing. So I mean, 20 minutes ground coffee, open to the environment. So that kind of moves me on to the packaged ground coffee. Now, packaging and the way certainly larger companies, I think the best people at this have traditionally been people like Elia, who are injecting kind of special combinations of different gases in there to kind of help with keeping that in a good kind of condition. I get a lot of reports of people saying, well, I'll buy an Elia tin, and I open it, and I brew my first brew with it, and it tastes nice, and then put it lid back on, put it back in the cupboard, come to it the next day, and I'm just really disappointed with the next one. And they shouldn't really be surprised, because Elia have done a fantastic job getting that tin to you and keeping it in perfect conditions, and paying lots of people lots of money to make sure they get the proportions of gas right and all that sort of stuff. As soon as you open that, it's not in Elia's control anymore, it's in your control. So you've got ground coffee that you've got completely and utterly just exposed to all those things. So you open the tin, and it's all just fills with air, and then you lock that in there, and you come back the next day and it's gone stale. So that's what's happening. For me, pre-ground coffee is a little bit like packing sort of it's Coke that's gone off. It's packing that. So I tend not to really consider that fresh in my eyes. But I mean, if that's the only thing that you can get and you can't get a grinder, then that's going to be better. That's going to be a step up from what you've previously been doing with things like instant coffee. So it's going to be tastier again. So when we talk about open beans, how long do they sort of start to kind of deteriorate? You really you need to sort of take, especially in a commercial environment, if you're working with a machine like this, we empty our hopper every night to make sure nothing stays in overnight, because you've got exposure to those 5 things for an extra 12 hours when you're not open. So why would you not have it in a bag at that point to stop that? So we found that if someone had forgotten to take the bag out, all the nice flowery stuff that we start to talk about and we like to kind of wax lyrical about, that disappears, and it's just becomes sort of generic coffee flavor after that point. So really you want to be putting as much as you dare, as little as you dare into the grinder for it to work, to brew nice, kind of consistent, beautifully tasting, getting closer to what it says on the bag sort of thing. So we start to see that drop off when it's sealed. You start to see it drop off kind of maybe 3 weeks is when it's kind of it's dropping off. The first few days is going to be a bit dodgy with the amount of carbon dioxide that's coming in there, but most of the time it's taking a bit of time to get to you. Espresso espresso is going to take a little bit longer. You tend to get a bit more problem with the carbon dioxide. It can peak. I've had some sort of really light roasted stuff that's hasn't peaked until after like a month and a half nearly, which is odd. But yeah, it hasn't kind of got to that point. But obviously you've got to keep it in a situation where it's not being exposed to those things. It's like an open fresh bag after that amount of time. Sealed beans, we start to see kind of 3 months being put on for people's shelf lives. That seems to be a good kind of rule of thumb. Drink within 3 months. If you can afford to get to buy things in smaller amounts and have them more often, then that's going to be better. You're going to be getting a better rotation rather than kind of keeping stuff in your cupboard if you haven't got kind of ideal conditions. Did you get any other answers pretty close, or were you completely miles off? Because normally everyone's totally miles off, but there we go.